All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to cover set 50 today, quadratic equations and completing the square. And the completing the square is actually more so what our lesson is going to be covering. Just a reminder, a quadratic equation, they have one unknown number and the highest power is 2. So all of these up on the board are examples of quadratic equations. This one here, you would keep in mind if you were to FOIL or box method, you're going to get that x squared term. So you'll have it there. All right, so let's start with completing the square. The first thing you want to do about completing the square is make sure both of your x terms are on the same side, and in this one they are, and we're just going to rewrite them in highest power first, and then our next one. So, okay, I'm going to leave a blank here, and then there. I also want to make sure my x squared term is positive, and it is in this case. So in completing the square, we are going to take our middle term, and we're going to divide it by 2. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Then we go ahead and we square that. And we're going to place that on both sides. Actually, we're going to have a little line over here too. That's positive 9, so I'm adding it to both sides. Okay, so now I have this quadratic here, and it's really nice. It's a simple quadratic that I could factor, and I'm going to have x minus 3 and x minus 3. All of your quadratics should turn into something that has the exact same two things. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite that as x minus 3 squared. Okay, negative 5 plus 9 gives me 4. So now I'm just going to go ahead and solve from here. To get rid of my square root, I square root, or to get rid of my square, I'm going to square root both sides. I get x minus 3, and I get plus or minus 2. And we've done problems from here like this for the rest of the way down. So the only new thing is this section here. Okay, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides. We have x equals 3 plus or minus 2, and we can actually do these. 3 plus 2 gives me 5, and 3 minus 2 gives me 1. So a true quadratic, it has 2 answers. You can go ahead and plug those back in and just make sure they work. So really, like I said, the only new thing is this part right here to give us this really nice term there. Okay, so let's remember, we want the x terms on the same side, which they both are in this case. We want the x squared term to be positive, and it's not. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to think about I'm moving it over here by adding it. It becomes positive. I'm moving that over, I'm adding it, becomes positive. Leave my space. Okay, and then I have to move my 4 over. So I'm going to make that a positive. Okay, so same step, take half of my b term, and I'm going to leave this as a fraction, 3 over 2. Then we square it. Remember, when we square a fraction, we do the top and the bottom. So we get 9 over 4 to this side, and we're going to get 9 over 4 to this side. So this looks yucky here, but know that it always goes into x plus or minus your b term, half your b term, squared. You can just jump right from there to this. You don't have to go through and factor it. Okay, so if we look over here, 4 plus 9 fourths, we have to make 4 into a fraction. Really, it's 4 over 1, so I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom both by 4. So I get 16 over 4 plus 9 over 4. This gives me 25 over 4. Okay, so now I want to get rid of my squared, so I'm going to square root both sides. And I get x plus 3 over 2. Now here, this turns into the square root in the numerator and the square root of the denominator. So we end up with 5 over 2. And if you have fractions, once you get to this step, your denominators should be the same. They don't, you have an error somewhere and you want to go back in and check on that. All right, remember that's a plus minus. Okay, so we're going to subtract 3 over 2 to both sides. All right, so we have x equals negative 3 over 2 plus or minus 5 over 2. They have common denominators, so I can go ahead and simplify. I get negative 3 plus 5, so I get 2 over 2. That's going to simplify to 1. And then I have negative 3 minus 5, which gives me negative 8 over 2, which is a negative 4. All right, let's try another one. Here, I see that my x squared term is negative, so I'm going to add to get to the other side so that it's positive. I can leave my negative 5x, and I'm going to add 6 to move it over. Right? Plus blank equals 6 plus blank. Okay. Take half of our b term, so negative 5 over 2, and then I'm going to square it and add it to both sides. So negative 5 squared turns into a 25, and 2 squared turns into 4. Remember, all of this stuff here is going to be easily rewritten as x minus my 5 over 2, or x plus or minus my half a b term. Okay, so 6 doesn't have a denominator, so we're going to times everything by 4. We end up with 24 over 4 plus our 25 over 4. So that gives us 49 over 4. Okay, I want to eliminate my squared. So I'm going to square root. Remember, it goes to the top and the bottom. X minus 5 over 2 equals plus or minus 7 over 2. All right, we want to get x by itself. Add your 5 over 2 to both sides. So we have 5 over 2 plus or minus 7 over 2. Okay, common denominator. So we're going to do 5 plus 7, and we get ourselves 12 over 2. So that gives us a 6. We have 5 minus 7, which gives us a negative 2 over 2, which gives us a negative 1. All right, we have one more here. So my x squared term is positive. I'm going to move that over by adding x to both sides. Leave myself a blank. 1, leave myself a blank. All right, half of my b term, think about that there's actually a 1 there. So I get 1/2. I'm going to square it. So I add 1/4 to both sides. So all this here factors into x plus 1/2 squared equals, okay, this is over 1, so times both sides by 4. 4 over 4 plus 1/4, so we get 5/4. All right, we're going to square root both sides. So we have x plus 1/2 equals, now here my numerator doesn't simplify. I can't take the square root of 5. So I leave it in there. And that is just fine to have in our answer. But I can take my square root of 4 and I get 2. So I'm going to minus 1/2 to both sides. So x equals, now this one we're going to write, you can either have as negative 1/2 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2, or because they have the same denominator, you can write negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 5 all over 2. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen.